So one of the things about this book that Albert has written, which is the story of his work with Keith LaMar and the story of Keith LaMar, is that he, I'm not sure how to translate the title. It's El jazz suena en el corredor de la muerte, and I don't know if it's jazz rings out or jazz is heard or jazz is playing. I have to work on that. But in the introduction, Albert says, when is it just to take a human being's life? At what point does a society become desensitized to the crimes committed by its own government? A few months ago, Keith LaMar received an official letter from the state of Ohio. When you were on death row, you were seized by a sort of excitement when your correspondence bears that return address. The hope of salvation, of pardon, is always there, even if your sentence is solid and you don't have a great deal of faith in the authorities bent on putting you to death. It's normal, and even more so, as in the case of a prisoner for whom prison, despite the 3 decades he has spent inside awaiting his death, has not managed to stop his feeling human and useful, with his desires and hopes. But cruelty soon dissipates the hope. With that letter, the state of Ohio was contacting Keith LaMar to inform him that in the event he couldn't be executed by lethal injection, he had a right to choose his mode of execution. To help him make this decision, the document included graphic information about all the available methods: gas chamber, electric chair, noose, shooting squad, or the most savage of all, the guillotine. The drawings set out in detail the correct way to tie a knot to hang an offender by the neck, the height at which the blade should be placed for the guillotine to be effective, or how the weapons should be loaded, some with blanks and others with the ammunition, to protect the feelings of the executioners. This is the character of the judiciary in the land of liberty, of the American dream. You have a right to choose the instrument of your death. And if they can't guarantee it, for example, because many drug companies, pressured by human rights associations, refuse to produce the poison they inject into the condemned, you have the right to choose another among the options each state allows: gassed, electrocuted, hanged, or shot. This last method is, together with the noose, one of the most painful, for it depends on the good marksmanship of the firing squad, who, if you are lucky, will liquidate you with a lethal bullet to the temple, or with several shots that hit your vital organs with accuracy. A few hours before, they will have allowed you to choose your favorite meal and hear your favorite music, which in the case of Keith will be one of his many jazz recordings, maybe even John Coltrane, the musician who has touched him most deeply. One last gesture of feigned humanity that serves to silence their consciences, but that does nothing but remind us that the execution already has a date on the calendar. November 16th, 2023. Perhaps this will be the date on which jazz will be heard for the last time in a solitary cell in the Youngstown prison.
Hi everybody. My name is Marquès. Thanks so much for inviting me here. I feel that I'm a piano player and a composer. I've never considered myself a writer, but here we are, presenting a book for Sandra, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. I didn't expect that. There's a lot to be seen in a short time, and the whole point of this project is always to amplify Keith's voice. So if everything works, Keith will be calling in 15 minutes and you will be able to hear from him directly. And just with this idea, the whole point is always to amplify his voice. I'll go very quickly. After Keith calls, maybe if there's time we can allow some questions, have time for some questions. This is how all of this started. This is Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, 2020. During the Black Lives Matter protests, I was going to those protests every day, and in fact, the slogan amplified Black voices. I heard that for the first time then. You can see me on the left. I was conducting around 30 musicians played for 3 hours with and for Keith LaMar, who is an innocent, we think he's an innocent black man in Ohio's death row that has been by now 33 years in solitary confinement. I'll go very quickly, but this is Keith. In 1993, there was the longest riot in US history that lasted 11 days in Lucasville in southern Ohio. And long story short, the state of Ohio accused him of organizing the riot and killing 5 prisoners. Of the 11 days that the riot lasted, he was in the prison the morning of the first day. During that is proven in court. Of that morning of the first day that he was in the prison, he spent 30 minutes, he says, going to the pot where his cell was to gather his belongings. The state of Ohio says that during those 30 minutes, supposedly, he killed 5 people and organized the riot. Just to give a little bit of context, one guard was murdered. The community in Southern Ohio really wanted somebody to pay for that mess, if you want to call it that way. And they found a young 19-year-old black man who was already in prison that was a perfect target, someone to blame that nobody would defend. This is Tompkins Square Park here in Manhattan, still during the 2020 pandemic context. I say pandemic context because thanks to the fact that musicians, we were not touring, we're not going anywhere, we were only Europe. That's how I convinced them to do all of that. By now, more than 70 musicians have been involved in Freedom First concerts that we have done all over the United States. Just in this year, we played in California, and UCLA, and many places. The Midwest, we just came back from playing in Vermont and Amherst College. We go to Italy, to Catalan. In fact, next week I'll be playing at the Vic Jazz Festival with Keith. Just always moving to go there. This is Keith and I during one of the visits. I put this picture here because it's impossible to understand what we are doing if you don't understand that there's an emotional connection, a friendship that goes beyond the project itself. This is a photo during the recording of which would become, in 2022, the first album in history that somebody made from death row. Marianne mentioned before that this is a newest style. It's interesting because a couple of days ago, there is a professor in the University of Sevilla who is writing a book, among other things, about this. And we were talking about the fact that in films they use non-actors, what they call non-actors. He was saying you're creating a thing with non-musicians. Keith LaMar is one of the people, incarcerated people that I've done these projects with, and I'm doing more now. And I think that it's very useful, the fact that I'm also a music teacher. I think I use those tools to accompany these people to be able to express themselves. One interesting thing also is that I feel that artists, we are always trying to find inspiration, right? Nature, we just saw one, or traveling, or sometimes somebody dies close to us, or we fall in love. When you work with people that experience this kind of things, are they artists? They don't need inspiration. They are just explaining their own story. And that's very powerful, and we have these discussions with Keith, is he an artist or not? Oh, the video works. The video works, no? What's this? If I press play? No. What happens now? Nothing? No. Okay, so I'll go to YouTube, because this is a musical project. It's a lot of information. The death penalty, especially when we're European, seems something really remote. Just to give an idea, how many here are European or non-American? Oh, okay, so there are a lot of people from the US. One of the things that surprised me about the death penalty is that I would say that just not a topic in the United States. It's not really discussed that much. I think that both parties kind of arrived to the conclusion that you will not gain or lose votes with it. So it's not really a part of the conversation. Biden promised that he would abolish the death penalty on the federal level. He didn't, but he's not executing. But it's not something that I feel that there's a passionate debate about it. But at the same time, I think that even people in the United States don't know that in the United States, more or less every 3-4 weeks, somebody's executed. And the state that's executing the most is Texas, but there are many others, like Oklahoma, for example. And it's not on the news. You would see CNN or you read the New York Times, and it's not really there. So that's one of the things that really surprised me where I got inside of that topic and I met other activists, that it's like a non-topic, it's not discussed. The United States, I think it's important to point out that the United States is alone in the so-called Western world, or civilized world you want to call it. The other countries that are part of that list of countries with the death penalty are countries such as China, Iran, Saudi Arabia. So it's a club that I personally would not want to belong, and I'm against the death penalty in all cases, even when they are not innocent. I want to show you a piece that it's called "Tell Them the Truth," because you can see us in the recording studio. This is the only piece where Keith was able to be with us in something that could be called like a Zoom meeting or a video call.
I'm ready. You know, whenever I think about all the struggles and strife I've been through in my life, it's truly hard to comprehend. I mean, I'm sitting inside a cage on death row, yo. So far away from home, so far away from everything I know. Might as well be sitting inside the hold of a spaceship. That's what it feels like to be here. Yet it's hard sometimes to see how what I'm going through is connected to what my ancestors suffered and survived. Truth be told, I'm lucky to be alive, real talk. Sometimes when things get too heavy to carry, I close my eyes and drift back to a time when everything was all good. A time when it was fully understood that being here on this earth was the big blessing. My grandfather taught me that. See, I grew up in a neighborhood called the Village. A small enclave on the east side of Cleveland. Beautiful place, yo. With fruit trees and sweet things on every corner. No lie. I'm surrounded by my family and friends. I'm telling you, there was no end to the love and shit. A real community led by people whose only plan was to live and give everything they had. They gave it all. Children of slaves who braved the worst of it. So we, the children and grandchildren, could make the most of it. Yeah. Still shield us from the pain of knowing the truth. They never explained what kind of society we were born into. They didn't tell us about all the tricks and traps that were designed to bring us slaves. About the hate that could deliver us to an early grave. They wanted us to be free. They wanted us not to see all the ugliness around us. So a lot of us got caught in the dark, lost the life that was linked to eyes. You gotta tell the children the truth. Tell them what they say, but what they do. Tell them the real reality. Their life isn't meant to be fair. That's meant to be lived. Tell the children the truth. That. Tell them the truth.
One of the reasons why I was
from half-price promotions. 8 days versus Buster.
You go down.
No.
People are gonna celebrate.
But I'll use the Spanish
Almost
translation.
cheesecake. What's this menu?
For the record, when this place is called Dave's, I will let all the busters come, except you.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I was very moved to be able to write a book about this is because I do hope that other musicians, that other artists will do similar work. Since we are connecting here, Catalonia and the United States, I want to say that this is possible in the United States thanks to the First Amendment. Recently, I did a project with Pablo Hasél, who is a Catalan rapper in prison for the lyrics of his songs, and I'm not allowed. I asked for permission to the Catalan government. I am not allowed to do what I do with prisoners here in Catalonia or Spain. So this can be done in the United States, and I hope that more people will do it. I put a few pictures of concerts that we have been doing. It's extremely powerful, I think, to see that Keith's spoken word and the music, jazz, has moved very different kinds of people. We can watch the video, but this is from a concert we did in Santiago de Chile. We were invited during last year, when was the 50th anniversary of Auguste Pinochet's coup d'etat. And we did this event, and the generation that attended the concert was, I don't know if you can see it here, but it was mainly older people, and they were all crying during the concert. And after I talked to some of them, and they were saying, "This reminds me of my brother who disappeared, or my father when the police took him during the coup d'etat." So it resonates in ways. The concert resonates in ways that I would have never imagined. And I always worry: is this like re-traumatizing you, right? When you have people in the audience that have been in prison. And the answer is always, no, it's the opposite. You're at least talking about this topic. I mentioned solitary confinement. This is a big problem in the United States. The person in the United States that spent more people in solitary confinement is also a black man who spent 55 years in solitary confinement. He was released a couple of years ago and declared innocent. The United Nations, that we have here, you block the way, says that more than 28 days in solitary confinement creates irreparable brain damage. That's why we considered it a form of torture. Keith, who we'll be calling soon, reads a lot. He's a person that is self-taught, and I say in the book that I think that he became an expert in a society that put him in that situation. Prisons are in our society, but at the same time, if none of you have ever been in one, the more I go to prisons, no matter the country, you do feel that you go to another galaxy. And when you get out of the prison and you leave them behind, you really feel that you're going somewhere else. That could be a topic by itself, all the people that wrote while being in prison and the perspective that can give you. I think that Keith became an intellectual, an extremely smart and informed person about a world that he's part of, but at the same time he's separated from. I don't know if that makes sense. You will hear from him very soon. That is still him in his cell. This is the prison in Youngstown, the state of Ohio, where he will speak from. It's a concert, in fact. You know what? I have a lot of concerts, but I think that this is a concert in Barcelona. This is here in Brooklyn a few months ago. This was in Berlin a couple of years ago when they gave us an award at the City Hall of Berlin in Germany. This is in Barcelona, Time Out magazine. Oh, okay, I'll explain that one. This was only a few weeks ago. It was, if you're Catalan, you probably know that it was the 50th anniversary of the execution of Salvador Puig, who was a Catalan anarchist, in this prison in Barcelona called La Model. And the sisters of Salvador Puig invited us to play at the event. And this is what you're seeing. We're playing inside of a prison that is not being used anymore. And we played with Keith calling live from death row, reminding the audience that the death penalty is still reality in so many places. Just to give an example, Iran last year executed more than 50 people, so many of them protesters. It is also used in countries like such as Saudi Arabia if you're homosexual. So the death penalty is actually very, very present in the world, even if we don't really talk about it. So let's see if Keith calls now. Maybe now would be the time to call. With that, have this speaker there, right?
You had it.
Here. Let's see if it works. Hey Keith, can you hear me? Hey, turning on the speaker, one second. Try again. Hi Keith, can you hear me?
It's Amy. He's calling back for a full 30 minutes. Here he comes. 1 second.
Okay. You can hear the message. This is what we do during the concert. After this, I can answer also questions.
Monitoring and recording. Utilization of an unapproved application and three-way calls to communicate are strictly prohibited and a violation of DRC policy. Thank you for using GTL. Thank you for using GTL.
Hi Keith, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How you doing, bro?
Good. The audience can hear you, so we're busy there. Organized by a friend of mine called Marianne. And we're talking about literature. So I guess I have my first question for you is, we have your book right here, and then, do you consider yourself a writer?
Yeah, I mean, a writer writes. And I wrote that book, and so, yeah, I'm a published author. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I consider myself a writer. I more consider myself a fighter because that book is, now a weapon to kind of fight the injustice of my situation. So I'm more a fighter than a writer. But yeah, I'm saying that I'm a writer, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of writing your book?
Well, first I had to learn how to write. When I first came to Death Row in 1995, I didn't know how to write. Didn't think it was even a possibility, but I met and was mentored by an older gentleman named Stu, who I mentioned in the music, the lyrics that we're doing. And he convinced me that in order to ultimately have an impact on my personal situation, that I, at some point, tell my own story. Insinuate myself into the narrative, because the story that the state was saying about me wasn't true. But they are the officials who, create the archive, that create the record, and that's pretty much set in stone unless you confront it, unless you try to overcome it. And so I had to learn how to write, and the way I did that, I was reading this book called Black Boy by Richard Wright. I read it every day and just observed how he used, how he constructed synthesis, how he used punctuation. I knew how to use a semicolon before I knew what a semicolon was, before I knew what an independent clause was, a coordinated conjunction. I knew how to use those things just by recognition of reading this book every day, every morning. And, I started practicing writing narrative. And once I was able to do that, and just using that book as a template, I was able then to kind of, drop my story into this template, but it was difficult because, when I first, my friend Amy Cadell, who, convinced me that I needed to write a full-length story about my situation, because I wrote a pamphlet at first, because I thought that was, within my capacity, to do. I the book that you have in front of you now, that book came, you know, after a lot of wrangling and convincing on Amy's behalf, but, you know, she convinced me that I had it in me to write that more detailed story. And that really changed the whole trajectory of my journey, being able to write that story and challenge the state's narrative. And, you know, when we first started campaigning on, you know, on an individual retrying my case in the court of public opinion, it was really like all bad. If you Google my name, Keith LaMar, murderer, monster, so on and so forth. So it took time and persistence to overwhelm that narrative. I think if you Google my name now, it's a totally different story. So the process was just basically being serious about, you know, my life, you know, and undertaking to challenge the story that was being told about me. And so that was my process, and just really sitting down to kind of understand what is the purpose of being able to utilize your own agency, to use your own voice. And, you know, those things are like the bedrock of my whole struggle. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your legal situation? We mentioned that you got a reprieve. Can you tell us a little bit about why are you on death row and what is the current situation?
Well, in 1993, a prison uprising occurred at the Southern High Correctional Facility here in Ohio, in Southern Ohio. And, you know, 10 people killed, 9 prisoners and 1 guard. And, you know, it was, you know, proven that, proven after the riot, there was 3 gangs that presided over the riot. And I wasn't a part of any of those gangs. I happened to be in the pod, assigned to the pod prior to the riot. I was assigned to a pod where most of the murders happened, the inmate murders. And at the beginning part of the riot, I came into this pod, didn't have my face covered because I wasn't a part of the riot. My name was mentioned in the investigation. Somebody saw me come into the pod, mentioned my name, and I was in prison for murder. And I think part of how I ultimately was put on trial is because I refused to accept a plea bargain. You know, many people don't know when they talk about the criminal justice system, you see law and order, and you think that, you know, this thing is really cut and dry, but it's really not cut and dry process. I mean, I even believe that. You know, I had never undergone a trial. The case that I was in prison for, I was guilty. I pled guilty. Threw myself on the mercy of the court and was serving a 15-year life sentence. This case, though I, asserted my innocence, the courts, the prosecution, you know, told me at the outset that we don't give a damn about that. You know, we get you, to the form, and we're going to put your black ass on death row if you don't take this plea bargain. And I almost took it. Not because, you know, I was guilty, but because, you know, the cards were stacked against me, and I saw that. But it was the attitude with which they tried to force me to do that just really kind of compelled me to go forward. And that was the pivot of my whole life, you know, because a lot of us, you know, unfortunately, confronted by typical situations that we take the easy way out or the deal. But there's really no deal in life, as I found out. You are either living your authentic life or you're not. And my 23-year-old self, I give all the credit because it was a really ballsy move. You know, there was no reason for me to believe at the time that I would be found not guilty, that I was somehow immersed in the situation unscathed. But I knew that if I took a deal, that would be worse than dying. And I knew that deep down in my soul, I knew that. And as it turns out, had I taken that deal, I would have never met all these amazing people who have mentored me and who have educated me, have tutored me and all these other things. And ultimately, I would have never met myself. And that's why we are here to have an encounter with ourselves. You know, and you know, I met these guys and they gave me that to understand. I would have never had the incentive to write. I would have never read. I've read over 1,000 things were brought on by the stringency of circumstances that I was thrown into. And so, I've been fighting this thing and screaming for the mountains. The people who put me here, the prosecution team who put me here out of Hamilton County, Ohio, put other people in the same situation, using the same MO, with the withholding of exculpatory evidence. And those cases have been overturned. And so right now, in my legal situation, I've always had court-appointed attorneys. And, you know, they were, by then, being paid by the state. And so they didn't go the extra mile that my situation required. Now, through this music, through this campaign, through the book, through the documentary, I have private attorneys who are now beholden to the state. For the first time in this whole, 30-year, almost 3 decades long odyssey, I feel the most hopeful because, the evidence, the thing about my situation, they didn't even try to cover up what they did. Because who's going to give a fuck about him? High school dropout, they looked at my visiting transcript and saw that I wasn't getting, many visits from my family, so they assumed from that I didn't have support. And they were only partially right. And they miscalculated the belief and determination that I, as an individual, possess. And they miscalculated on how, Mr. Wright, in that book I referenced earlier, he said that if you speak out who you are, you will discover that you are not alone. But eventually you have to find out who you are and how to become that person. But once you do that and you speak out, all these, amazing things can happen. And so I'm right now in the process of trying to wrest my life back from this unjust system, and I think I have the chance to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. One last question. What role has jazz, music, literature, art played? What role is it playing in your liberation?
Art is, it's everything. It has played the biggest part. Because often what I'm doing is speaking out who I am through these various means and modes of expression. I want my life back. That's something that I've been, saying and praying about since I was going into this situation. And so you ask, it's a legal situation, so what does music have to do with, the legality of your case? I, at first, couldn't see that connection. But we live in a sympathetic universe. By which I mean that, the images and the beliefs that we hold, carries power. That what we put out ultimately comes back to us. It might not be in the way that we imagine, maybe we can't even conceive the path that will, point us, in the direction that we need to walk. But you have to be open, you have to believe that there's something higher than yourself, your own little self. And I had nothing to lose by, taking on that thing. And I don't mean to suggest that I'm religious. I don't think you even have to be religious. Because that ultimately is also just a path. But you have to put yourself on the path. And music is something that has helped me together, jazz in particular, since I was thrown into this situation. John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, Buzz Powell, Miles Davis, all these people, I've been listening to them, I know the story, I know where this music comes from. And so, the fact that this music is playing such an important part in my regaining my freedom, it makes sense now. But it didn't at the time. And as you know, and as you probably share with everybody, we've been doing this music all over the world. In 4 different languages. We're right now in talks with doing a documentary that will hopefully very soon be released on that. That's happening, not just from the music, but from the book. But all started when you stand up and you claim your life. That's where it begins at. Your life is not your life until you claim it. Doesn't matter if you're on death row, doesn't matter if you're in the conference room, it doesn't matter if you just sit at home or whatever. You have to claim your life in order for it to be yours. And you have to do something. Living is a verb, it's something that you do. And so all those things I had to put together, but I didn't come to those things on my own. I was lucky. I met some beautiful people in here and out the street, out there. And yourself included out there, because you the one who told me, saying, listen, Keith, I think we could do an album. I thought you were crazy. I happened. And then, I so that you played the video for everybody that when we did Tell Me the Truth. That was my first time ever being in the studio, so to speak. And I felt really, really out of my depth. And I felt that way for a long time. It took me a while to embrace this journey, but that's what it took. And I feel more confident. I don't necessarily consider myself a musician, though. I know that the musicians that we are playing with, professional confident musicians, elevate my story. I'm still just fighting. You know what I mean? And that's it. I'm just fighting. I'm fighting, and I do it in a state of gratefulness and recognition of the miraculousness of my journey. That I persevered. If I didn't do it on my own, I did it because I kept my heart right, because I kept my mind open, and that I continue to believe that the best possible things are still possible. That's the only way I can actually explain it. Yeah. You're very welcome, man. Love you too.
Thank you. 9 p.m. If there are any questions, I'm sure I'll be here. If you want to buy the book, ask any questions, I'll be here. Please come. If not, there's an amazing New York Times article about it that was published right when we published when we released the album. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing Keith to us. It was just so moving and enlightening. And your book. But I want to ask you one question. How did you come to know Keith?
During so Brian Jackson, who is well known for the work that he did with Gil Scott-Heron in the 1970s, precisely mixing poetry and jazz, lived in my building in Brooklyn. Neighbors. We were doing the laundry together, and we met each other. And his wife read his book, Keith's book. We were talking. This is during the George Floyd context, and we were talking about how we were reacting to the government killing an innocent black man. And then we were talking. He asked, "What if we could protest before? What if we did prevent protesting instead of reactive protesting?" And that was kind of the beginning in my head of like making those connections. We had no idea that this would unleash what has happened. He mentioned the new team of lawyers. This team of lawyers this lawyer was brought to a concert we did at Joe's Spa by a friend that we have, Wally. And music has this power to, in a way, move you beyond politics. I'll say it differently. We played once in Akron, Ohio, and there was a man that came after the concert. An old man came and said, "He came here, but I kind of wanted to come and criticize you after the concert." I said, "Okay, okay. Why do you tell me that?" He said, "But I don't think what you're doing is political, jazz. I think what you're trying is to make us empathize with this man." I mean, Keith sounds amazing. It was now like if he was talking from, I don't know, the couch of his living room. He's in that cell 23 hours per day, and when he's not there, he's basically alone. The strength that he finds is truly inspiring. And there are so many. Before we go, just that was one of the things that I really tried in the book, to put as much data as possible because otherwise, like, my opinion, who cares? I'm a piano player from Canada. Why would you care about anything about this? But just to mention a few things, the racial bias. The state of Ohio has 12% of the population of Ohio are black. 55% of the population on Ohio's death row are black. This affects disproportionately black and poor people in this country. Keith is not the only one. I've received messages on Instagram of other people asking to the similar thing. Just on the death penalty topic, since the death penalty was reinstalled in the United States in the 70s. There was a pause for a little bit. The Supreme Court stopped it from it. Since it was restored, 1 in every 9 people on the other United States have been declared innocent by the courts before or after the execution. What margin of error is acceptable in this topic? Let's finish with that question. Thank you, everybody.